But the whole point is that the rabbit, he understood a little bit about this situation, and he put it up, and he drew an inference, and he said to the man, listen, we are failing. We are not doing anything good. Perhaps we should have a bold stroke. And the man didn't understand. But the rabbit, he said, okay, perhaps it's not a bold stroke. But perhaps we should follow our inner voice. Perhaps we should follow our inner integrity. Perhaps we should figure something out that we could have a scheme and we can make some money. We could do something. But the man, he was always involved with Ralph Cramden-esque schemes, and he was always 3, 4, 5, steps ahead of where you would be at the beginning. But the rabbit understood the beginning. You would have to publicize the fact that it was a talking rabbit, that the rabbit spoke. So, because the rabbit was not overly intelligent in any way, stretch of the imagination, finally his scheme was that the man and the dog and the rabbit finally won, and the dog was given 3/5 of a vote. The dog received 3/5 of a vote, and the man and the rabbit were each given a whole vote. So the man and the rabbit had a single vote, each had a whole vote, and the dog had 3/5. And the rabbit, he suggested that to begin the publicization of his ability to speak, they would go down to the Dairy Queen. And the man said, I would prefer to go to the dairy chair. But the rabbit said, the dairy chair is a town over. The Dairy Queen is in our town. We should go to our town and alert the press, alert the media, and everybody comes, and you will cradle me in your arms, and I will order our food at the Dairy Queen. And the man said, I prefer the dairy chair, hamburgers. And the rabbit said, it's inconsequential. The rabbit wasn't that smart because it's not that great of a scheme. If you were going to do something, maybe you would go to New York and you would try to do something in New York or Los Angeles, or you would go to Paris or someplace. And, the rabbit will begin speaking. But the rabbit, he was in a small town in Kentucky, and he said, I will go to the Dairy Queen, and I will order my food for myself and my friend the man and my friend the dog. And as I speak and as I order, because a big crowd always gathered around at the Dairy Queen entrance. They had 4 windows. But the Dairy Queen, I don't know if it was a joke on the people or if the Dairy Queen had developed somehow, but the people had heard. They would herd up to the 4 windows. There was no lines. As somebody said one time, hey, can't you have a line? Can we have a line at each of the windows? So maybe this line goes faster than that window. It was a herd. It was a concave herd of fat people, usually fat, obese people looking to get their fix from the Dairy Queen. Perhaps, it would be Frosties, or it would be Sundays, or it would be slurries, or hamburgers, and all sorts of disgusting, fat and artery clogging foods. They had funnel cakes, and they had French fries. They had onion rings. They had cheeseburgers. They had all sorts of things. But when the rabbit, he said, "Oh my goodness, there's no line. How are you? These people are so stupid." Even though the rabbit wasn't that stupid, he said, "This is not how you do it." Also, the rabbit looked around. He said, "These people are obese. Their thighs are all big as around the tree trunks. This woman here looks like a small Volkswagen. This man over here looks like a redwood stump. This boy over here, he looks like somebody's been force-feeding him like you would do a goose to make the goose, with the liver, the goose tartare, or whatever they call it, the foie gras. This boy looked like he was being force-fed to make foie gras. Little boy foie gras. But there was not too many thin people. There was not too many pretty people. There looked like a lot of impatient, hungry people. There was like a herd of wildebeest, big fat, punchy wildebeest, or hogs, big giant hogs that were, being fattened for a holiday slaughter, that they would be coming towards a holiday, perhaps a Thanksgiving or something, and they would slaughter them. They were gathered around, and it was a mob. It was the concave herd of fat slobs trying to get to their greasy, horrifying, bad artery clogging, heart stopping food. But the rabbit and the man, they finally blundered towards the line. They blundered towards the window, and the girl finally said, "What can I do for you?" And the rabbit, he spoke up immediately and said, "I will take." And the rabbit didn't know what to do because he thought maybe I should get some French fries. It's a vegetable. It's not really a vegetable. The rabbit wasn't too smart. It's a starch. The rabbit thought it's a vegetable, but it's a starch. But something told the man, something told the rabbit, his intuition or his rabbit instinct. And he said, "I will take mushrooms. I will take some breaded mushrooms." And the girl looked and she thought she saw the rabbit talking, but then she looked up at the man and said, "That's $4.39 plus tax." And the rabbit spoke up. He said, I would like a Coke, a small Coke, to go along with the mushrooms. So I'd like some bread and mushrooms. And the girl looked up, and it was too late. She thought she heard the rabbit speaking, but she looked at the man and said, "Yeah, I know, it's $4.39 plus tax." And the dog, he didn't know anything. And so the rabbit, he looked down at the dog, and the dog was like drooling or looking antsy. And the rabbit spoke up. He looked directly in the girl's eyes, and he said directly to the girl so she could see his mouth move. He said, "I would like a hamburger, but there would be nothing on it. A cheeseburger. Give me a cheeseburger. Nothing. Plain. No ketchup. Nothing. Just give me a cheeseburger and the bun." And they locked eyes. And the girl, she saw the rabbit speaking, but this girl, she wasn't so bright. And she wasn't, and who knows what was going on in her mind, or who knows what was going on in her life. Perhaps her boyfriend had left her. Perhaps her boyfriend wasn't attentive. Perhaps she had a child at the house, a little baby. Perhaps her parents weren't that great of a winning solution. Perhaps she went home to a small hovel. She wasn't that happy. Perhaps she had a hitchhike. Who knows? This girl, she didn't care. She thought she saw the rabbit's mouth move, and the rabbit saw their eyes locked, and the girl, she didn't care. And she didn't say nothing to nobody. She went back. She went back and she made up a order of deep fried mushrooms and a plain cheeseburger. And she came back up and she said $7.59. And the man came up to the window, and he was at a loss, and he gave her $8 or $9, and he said, "Keep the change." And the girl was very thankful. The girl almost looked and she almost winked. She did not wink. She almost looked and almost winked because she was happy to get a tip, because not too many people tip in Kentucky. So she was very happy to get a little tip, and she almost stirred her to her imagination, almost brought her out of her funk, out of her her haze, her fog. She almost came out of her funk and said to almost said, "Oh my God, this rabbit is speaking," but she didn't. Who knows? Nobody could understand. Nobody was ever going to tell me why it happened this way. But it happened that way. And the girl, she saw the rabbit speak, but somehow it didn't register. It did not register thoroughly enough in her brain. So she said to everybody, "The rabbit is talking. There's a talking rabbit out here ordering an order of deep fried mushrooms and a cheeseburger, a plain cheeseburger." And the man, he didn't know anything, so he took his cheeseburger and his mushrooms, and they got back in the car, and the rabbit was indignant. He was so mad. He said, "Oh my goodness. Well, this didn't even work. This scheme to publicize the fact, to alert the media, to alert the public that I've, nothing. Nobody understood." And the man, he was already eating a mushroom, and the rabbit thought, "Oh my goodness, those mushrooms smell good." And remember, this rabbit was not that smart. He was only as smart as an average intelligent rabbit, which is not that intelligent in the grand scheme of things. And the dog, the man had already given the dog the cheeseburger, and he gulped it down in 2 bites, and the dog was already laying down as if he was over. He just wanted to go home. He didn't even know what was going on. And the rabbit, he smelled the mushroom. He thought, I would eat a hot, batter-dipped, deep-fried mushroom. It smells delicious. And the man and the rabbit, they shared the mushrooms. And then they drove home back to the glorious, beautiful estate, and they went back into the little tiny portion of the estate, the little tiny apartment, and they turned on Columbo. And the rabbit and the man, they enjoyed Columbo. They loved Columbo. And the rabbit, he actually said, "Hey, those mushrooms were pretty good, but I feel already my arteries clogging. I have little tiny rabbit arteries, and if I don't eat, strictly vegetables, if I don't eat vegetables and run around a lot, and also, fornicate a lot, but ever since you got the power of speech, none of the other rabbit girls, the rabbit women, they didn't want nothing to do, and they didn't understand him. They thought he was too untouchable. He thought he was too great. He was like a celebrity in the rabbit world. He was He was like an Adonis, or you couldn't even, nobody was trying. The women were afraid, they were intimidated. The women, the little rabbit girls, they didn't want to get up with him because he was too overbearing. It was intimidating. And so he was lonely. They had no sex with no other rabbits. He wasn't getting no exercise. They really weren't running him, the dog and the man. They didn't understand the rabbit needed a lot of exercise. And the rabbit was on a very bad diet of different kinds of things, bananas and Fruit Loops and high C fruit drinks and different things that wasn't very good for him. And he had eaten the mushrooms, and he was happy. Felt full. He felt full with the mushrooms. He's saying, my arteries, I must feel my arteries clogging. And that's what eventually killed the rabbit. The rabbit lived a good long time, but eventually what killed him was degenerative heart and scoliosis of the arteries. So, but he was, because he could already tell it was not a good thing, because they never changed course. The man, the dog, and the rabbit, that's one thing, they never changed course. Even plunging towards the divorce that they would suffer, and they would separate, and but the rabbit and the unhealthy lifestyle that the rabbit had adopted, no one understood it. But this first scheme, the rabbit thought up to go to the Dairy Queen and order some good, delicious foods, and everybody would want, the herd of people, the concaved herd of fat slovenly people who were trying to eat all their disgusting, greasy, artery-clogging food. And they didn't care. They were in their own world. They were just dying to get their food and eat their food and sate their lusts for their desires for their foods that were no good for people. But no one, there was no media came. The man never called nobody. The man was supposed to call the radio stations and the local media, the one single newspaper they had in the town, this one rag. The rag only came out once or twice a week, and no one ever came. No one knew. And the rabbit, the girl, she was in her own world. She didn't care. She had her own problems, her own life. And nobody. And they got back in the car, and they went back, and they watched Columbo. And they were satisfied to watch Columbo. The man was noshing on a few pecans, and the rabbit was wishing he had some greens, but he didn't have nothing, so he ate a couple corn chips. And the rabbit looked over at the man, and he thought, oh my God, nothing's gonna be good. Nothing. We're not gonna have and I can't think of a scheme, and this man can't think of a scheme. And even though they had devised a voting system, they never had nothing to vote on. They thought perhaps they would have a whole, a menage of choices and episodes and moving forward, and plateaus and escalations, and they would have something to worry about, and they would be so inundated with so many opportunities and choices they would have to vote. They never voted on nothing. The man had a vote, the rabbit had a vote, and the dog had 3/4 of a vote, and they never had a single vote. And this is the most sad thing. They had devised a system to solve their problems, and they didn't even bring it up. They just sat there and they watched Columbo, and the worst thing, they watched it on IMB, and they had to watch like 90 to a minute and a half, 90 seconds to more seconds of a minute and a half to like 3 minutes of commercials. And they watched the commercials, and they just did what they had to do. And eventually they went to sleep. That night they eventually laid down and went to sleep. And the rabbit, he chalked up his first scheme failure to a failure of the man. And the problem was the rabbit didn't understand that partially a significant portion was his own failure. But he wasn't that smart, because he was only as smart as a moderately intelligent rabbit. So he didn't see his own culpability.